But Jimmy Hyams joins us now. He's a Hall of Famer in every Hall of Fame that I can imagine. A mentor, a good friend, and just a great guy. Recently announced his retirement. I can't imagine what that's going to be like, the media daily ins and outs without him. So I just want to start by, Jimmy, congratulations on your retirement and one heck of a career.
Dave, I appreciate it. I was surprised how many people had hoped I'd retired sooner. But hey, they were stuck with me a little bit longer than they wanted to.
Jimmy's the best at and he doesn't mean to do it, but you're the best at tweeting, and for some reason when you tell the truth it gets some people upset. So on your retirement tweet, I did scroll down to see how many it would take before somebody said something smart alecky, and it was 9 for the record.
I'm surprised it took that long.
Well, congratulations. There's a lot of things I want to get to with you. And in particular, I wanted to kick around Josh Heupel's recent hires versus Nick Saban's recent hires. Whereas Josh Heupel stays in-house, it appears as if Nick Saban is going to go out of house. But he's also, by his hires, it seems like to me maybe going back to something a little bit more traditional offensively and something he can control defensively. What did you think of the hires?
I think that here's the way I look at that. When Nick Saban hires somebody on defense, it's usually somebody that has had something to do with the system, and he feels comfortable with them. Look, this is Kevin Steele's third go-round at Alabama. He actually helped Nick Saban figure out how to handle the zone blitzes years ago when Kevin Steele was on his staff. So it looks to me like Saban's comfort zone most time is to go with the guy that's been on his staff. Kirby Smart was on his staff for a long time, right? When he goes offense, he's a little bit more inclined to bring in some new blood, okay? I think there's a little bit of that with Josh Heupel. Look at his promotions. So he goes with the quarterbacks coach now that's his offensive coordinator. He promotes a tight ends coach. He has his set offense the way he wants to run it, and he wants people familiar with that. But when he goes out and hires defensive coaches, they're people that don't necessarily have ties to him. So I think I see a similarity. Saban more toward defensive guys with familiarity, Heupel more toward offensive guys with his familiarity. And then they branch out a little bit when it comes to the opposite side of the ball.
That's a great point. Schematically, though, the two hires are way different. Josh Heupel is the offensive coordinator. Essentially, he's going to run what he wants to run.
Right.
Alabama's decision to go with Tommy Rees, I think, says that they're going to be more pro style maybe moving forward. And first, do you agree with that? Second, did Alabama get a little bit soft over the course of the past couple of years?
On offense, I think maybe a little bit. And look, what they've done on offense has served them pretty well. Okay. Yeah. It's like if they don't make it to the national championship or win the national championship, what's wrong with Nick Saban? What's wrong with Alabama? But they're always in the hunt regardless. And it was Lane Kiffin that brought in more of the spread, more of the some up tempo to do some things like that. Of course, and he had some pretty good quarterbacks to work with, and he molded some quarterbacks. So I do think they're going back a little bit more toward the pro style. The pro style would be more running the football, more power football than what they've been doing. They spread it out a lot. Their running totals weren't that good last year, even though I thought they had a really good running back in Gibbs. But I do think they got, I don't know if soft's too harsh of a word, but they weren't as physical on offense as they had been in the past. And they had more trouble just lining up and running at you when they needed to run the football to run the clock. And so I do think they're going to go back toward more physical offensive play. And also they've recruited really good offensive linemen. They have the offensive personnel, I think, to run that type of a scheme with more of a power game.
Jimmy, the thing that threw me off with the Tommy Rees hire was I looked at his last 3 years at Notre Dame, and he's never had a top 20 offense any of the years.
Yeah.
And I wonder, now there could be two reasons for that, and I wonder which one you think it is. Do you think he's just not that great of an offensive coordinator, or is it because I would say maybe similar to Jim Chaney or even Todd Monken, like the pro-style offense is more dependent on talent, and Notre Dame just didn't have the talent that he's going to have at Alabama?
I think there's something to be said for that. I'm a little bit unsure about how good their quarterback play was. That's one. The second thing is they had a really good kind of a scat back named Tyree, And I thought he would be much involved with the offense. And they ended up going back to a couple more power running backs. And Tyree didn't get as many touches or wasn't as productive as I thought. So that surprised me a little bit. But you're right about Reese. He doesn't strike me as somebody that's going to come in and wow you with what he does on offense. And so I do wonder, today's point, is Alabama going to go back to more of a running game, control the clock a little bit more, and rely more on their defense? So I do wonder if that's the scheme, but I was a little bit surprised. Now, he tried to hire the guy from Washington, and the guy at Washington likes to throw it a lot more, right? If you saw what Michael Penix did at Washington, but then he goes to Reese, who doesn't throw it as much and hasn't been as productive. So I'll be really interested to see that if Alabama changes their philosophy, which I think they will. And by the way, I don't know how in the world they can find a quarterback as good as Bryce Young. I see an offensive drop-off at Alabama.
No, I completely agree. I'm curious, getting back to Heupel. You and I have seen you more than me, but we've seen these fantastic offenses come in, and eventually somebody tends to catch up, whether we're talking about Steve Spurrier's fun and gun or Urban Meyer's spread. And I'm curious what signs you look for that maybe somebody could start to catch up to Josh Heupel's offense. And do you think it's a matter of time, or is he really onto something long term?
I don't think people will catch up to his offense as long as he has an efficient quarterback. As long as he's got somebody as good as Hendon Hooker, because what they do so often, Dave, is it's a lot of read and react on offense. So if the defense does this, my receiver's doing that, and the quarterback, you better read it properly. And I think as long as you've got those elements in play, I don't know that defenses can catch up to that. So I think his offense, now look, they're not going to lead the nation in scoring and total offense every year. But they can, if you look at Heupel's last 5 years, counting Central Florida, he's been in the top 10 in points, top 10 in total yards every year. And again, it gets back to the quarterback. If Joe Milton plays like he did against Clemson, the offense will be fine. If he overthrows people, if he starts making bad decisions like he did the year before in 2021, then this offense is going to sputter a little bit. So I think it's more on the efficiency of the quarterback than defense is catching up.
Is there also an advantage, Jimmy, with Josh Heupel? It seems like, at least from his time at Missouri in 2016 to now, he's already adapted to some of the changes that happen in college football if people figure certain things out. So do you see a parallel with him and Steve Spurrier in that regard, which is when Steve Spurrier's fun and gun was figured out, I would say probably by 97, people started to figure it out. He still had some good years at Florida, and I mean, his best offensive year was with Rex Grossman in 2001. And you see Josh Heupel doing that in the future too?
Yeah, and as I remember that 2001 team, I think that was Spurrier's last team. So Tennessee beat him 34-32. Catching up is kind of a relative term. If you go from averaging 40 points to 36, that's still pretty good, right? So I think I'll be curious to see with Heupel. Here's the thing that I see in Josh Heupel. I think he can take players. Look, Virginia Tech discarded Hendon Hooker, and he became a Heisman Trophy candidate. Cedric Tillman had 8 catches in 3 years, and the next thing you know, he's catching 60-something passes for over 1,000 yards. I think he does more with less on offense, with offensive talent, than anybody in the country. So for him to succeed at a higher level, I think he's got to get studs on defense. And the defense actually wasn't as bad as some people thought. But going back to your question about offense, I think he's going to be fine there because – and he doesn't play a lot of receivers. I mean, he zeroes in on 3 guys, and then you don't see a whole lot of substituting along the way. But I think that as long as he is running this offense with an efficient quarterback, the catching up part is going to be interesting. If you go from averaging 47 points to 40, you're still pretty good, right?
Yeah. I think the other benefit, too, is that for Heupel is that offensive linemen on pass plays are allowed to run like 18 yards downfield. Unless they change that, which helps his RPO, I think he's good.